The one thing that I've always wanted was something different than what I had coming up. Growing up poor, growing up check to check, growing up pillar to post, growing up with no stable foundation. I knew that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't know how I was going to get something different. I don't want to be, lie here and say like I had the plan all figured out, but I knew that wasn't it for me. And so, whatever it took to get something different, I was willing to try that.
Welcome to another edition of the Black Male Podcast. I am your host, AP, and today I have a very special guest with me. Right alongside me, I have one of my cousins, very esteemed family member, veteran of the public school system for 23 years strong. You know, it takes a strong person to be in this public school system, even for a couple months, but this man has been doing it for 23 years strong. I'm going to introduce to some and reintroduce to most. Mr. Stacy Pearson. Welcome, cuz.
Smokey and the Bandit,
Smokey
aff-
and the Bandit. For those who don't know,
uh,
for those who don't know.
affectionately known as Adrian. Some call him Black Jesus. In the family, we call him Smokey.
That's right. That's right. And only if you know, you know. If you don't know, you better not dare call me that name, or it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be a problem.
Yeah.
All right, cuz. Go ahead and tell everybody who you are, man, and what you got going on.
Hey, cuz, all right. So I'm Stacey Pearson, as you said, 47 years old, man. Grew up in Northeast Houston. Obviously had a little difficult upbringing, or I should say different upbringing, not necessarily difficult, different upbringing. Uh, Adrian, you were basically affectionately a part of the first 8 years or so of that upbringing before you and the family got in the military and moved off. As you know, we were both raised by our godmother, who I guess I called her my grandmother. I don't know if you actually went that far with it, but we
She
were
was
raised by
everything. She was
yeah, she was.
everything.
We was raised by our grandmother, and man, I tell you what, growing up with no brothers and sisters, and when you moved off, man, that was a huge, huge void that was left in my life, man. Because I was one of the you were the closest cousins that I had, coming up. Obviously, we were raised like brothers on the early phase, but from that point, man, I grew up in Northeast Houston, like I said. I obviously we had our own set of challenges in Northeast Houston. We had uh, things that most Black communities had to deal with. But I was very fortunate enough to be involved in athletics, and so athletics kind of kept me out of a lot of the things that I needed. That kind of kept me distracted from the things that was happening around us, and as well as happening in our family real time. And so. Uh, I'm not gonna lie to anybody and say I was the most studious person, but I was pretty decent at ball, just like you were, AP, and had an opportunity to go off to college, and ball paid the way for me because obviously growing up poor, if we had been like most kids and depending on our parents or our family to pay for college, we wouldn't have had that opportunity. And so, uh, despite of my lack of performance in the classroom, my performance on the athletic field provided those opportunities for me to go off to college. I left with Forest Brook High School, had plenty of state accolades as it relates to a high school ball player. Had an opportunity to go off to college and played at Blinn Junior College first, which was a byproduct of what took place in the classroom, not because of performance. I was a junior college athlete at that time because obviously we didn't qualify. And so we left from Blinn Junior College to Angelo State, where I got my undergrad degree. I graduated Angelo State in 2002. And from there, I started my educational career around '03. I had an opportunity to play a little ball, do my thing. Had a couple workouts in the league that didn't work out. Obviously, we had to get a real job. My first kid was born in '03. I was married in '03 and started my career path in '03. And so in '03, I was very fortunate, and you were very gracious in the beginning of this interview to call me an educator. I don't want to insult teachers, people that do this thing for a living, and call myself an educator, but I did start off in the classroom, believe it or not, for a year and a half before I fast tracked on the coaching side of things. And so I became a coordinator pretty quick. I became a head coach pretty quick. And those things afforded me the opportunity to move up in administration and become a campus level administrator, become a district level administrator. And so, therefore, my career has allowed me to travel across the state of Texas and doing what I do with school operations. And so I like to look at it as providing opportunities for students to achieve from a different perspective. You know, we're competing at a different level these days. And so my competition these days is making sure that kids have an opportunity in a high quality learning environment to be able to get achieve academic excellence. And so that's my story in a nutshell, AP. Just, I'm an educator on the back end of my career, just like most people, former athlete, and just education has been my choice of career. So it's been good to me so far.
That's good. That's good. And you touched on a few things I want to pivot on. When you said that there is a lot of things that, in your upbringing, because you had to lean on athletics to be your path to get to where you are. I don't think a lot of people understand that, for most people or all people that are in that same predicament, that's all they have to hang on. If they don't
Yeah,
have athletics or they don't have any type of sports or anything like that, they have nothing. So it's all or nothing. I think back to one of my college teammates, and I'll remember this to this day. I'll never forget this. It was like all the seniors got a chance to talk, and the first thing he said, I wish I graduated with my degree so I can have my grandmother smile because I'll be the first person in the family to graduate because all everybody did was just force us to play ball because that's all we knew. I mean, from
yeah,
his father, from his grandfather, and everybody else because they grew up in the same era, in the same meager means. They had the same thing, but there's some
yeah,
things that happen within that you learn to find yourself in the things that takes more than what other people have that other people don't know that's within them. You're forced to grow up a little faster and to see life in a different facet than other people do. Okay, would you
yeah.
agree with that or disagree with that?
No, I totally agree, man. And to shed a little bit more of a light on that, because a lot of people truly don't know my story. And so, one thing that I don't mind sharing, and I'll be honest, Adrian, it took a lot of healing to be able to get me to talk about this in a public setting. Growing up, I was raised by my godmother and godparents for the majority of my life, and so I didn't have that quote unquote father figure, direct father figure in my life. I'm a young man or a man that grew up without knowing who my father is. And I harbored a lot of tension about that. There was a lot of consternation in my upbringing as a result of that. But I can tell you, and I'm especially proud of this, being one that public education has been a major part of who I am and what I represent. And I share with people all the time that, I am what you call the product of the system, not necessarily the product of the correctional system, but the product of a public education system. I share with people all the time that I'm the product of what happens when a system cares. I'm a product of good teachers, good coaches, and good administrators. So there was a male void in my life that my grandfather tried to fill, obviously, and I had uncles that were in and out, to try to do their part. But for the most part, that male representation in my life was represented by my ball coaches, especially my high school ball coaches, more in particular, Bruce Bell, who was my high school football coach. And so Bruce took an instrumental part of my life and making sure that he guided me toward things that helped me be somewhat successful today. And so the idea of athletics being the platform that provided the opportunity for me, the idea that athletics provided those male figures, those positive male role models like Bruce Bell and David Suggs and Coach Dunn, God rest his soul, and Coach Marshall White and all the John Starlin, who was my position coach. All of these guys who I still talk to today, those that are alive that still have a hand in guiding my upbringing today, those guys paved the way for me as a male figure. And I tell you, you know, there was really a spinoff to that too, Adrian. And so the spinoff is, part of the challenge that we have as African American men is trying to raise a family and raise kids without that productive role model. And so this whole idea of family, this whole idea of what I'm trying to introduce into my family circle, which my kids will be the first to tell you, a lot of the things that we did growing up was trial and error. and they'll tell you that they had some experiences coming up that wasn't always pleasant, right? And it wasn't because dad was mean or didn't have an idea. It was that dad was doing this without that role model, without that blueprint to what family should look like. I'm extremely grateful, man, that the men that I put in my life, that God put in my life, I'll say, along with pastors and things like that, that continue to pray for me, and those guys that were in my immediate circle who helped influence who I am today. Those guys continue to pour into me and sharpen the iron that I am to be able to provide for my next generation, which is my three kids. It's a whole thing. Athletics paved the way, my community paved the way, my godparents were instrumental, and I want to call them by name too, because people don't. Today we don't do godparents as much as we did back then. But Mary and Eddie Kellum, man, they were. I can't tell. They were giants in my world, and I can tell you that I am today because of who they were for me. Now that's no slight to my mom. Obviously, my mom did the best that she could with what she had during that time, um, one of the things that I really appreciate from her, and this is a growth thing for me, right? One of those things that I really appreciate from her was that, recognizing at 17, 18 years old when she had me, it took a tall person to realize she needed some help. A lot of parents wouldn't make that decision to give their child up to somebody to help in raising their kid. And it took a long time for me to get there, Adrian, and I want to say that out loud. And so I do want to say that a lot of that healing for me is happening now in my later years, and I'm starting to understand a little bit better what parenthood is about, and understanding how it takes that village to raise a kid, and understanding that ecosystem that formed my system, my circle. All of those things, man, are a byproduct of who sits before you guys today.
That's good. That's good. And I want to applaud you for being strong enough to say the things that you were dealing with and also the things that you're still healing from. With listening to you, I know we share the same pattern because there's some things earlier in my life that were parallel to what you were talking about. I didn't meet my dad until I had a kid. I was 24, and that was at Granny's funeral. That's the first
Yeah,
time I met him
yeah,
myself. It was hard to, like, all these years wanted to know who that person was or where I come from, to finally see that person and be like, okay, I could put this to bed, but what do I do with everything else? And
that's
there's
right.
so much for, like, a young man, especially a young man that now has a child. What do I do with this?
Yeah,
It's hard. You talk about your kids and their early upbringing. My older kids will say the same thing, and we will constantly have this conversation. That when we FaceTime, my daughter would say, the younger kids have it better than us. I said they don't have it better than you. They have it different than you have it.
yeah,
I said you had a raw dad. You had a raw
yeah,
dad. Like, the
yeah,
younger kids don't have a raw dad. They just
yeah,
have a more mature dad.
yeah,
Back then they wouldn't have had that. So if they would have had the dad you had, then I mean you still were successful because inside of you you strove for something. But it doesn't
yeah,
mean that their lives are better than yours. I mean, they still
yeah,
have their things they're going through, but at the same time, it's just like coming from a starting point, which is us,
yeah,
the things that we want to teach them and the things that we had to learn the hard way, we don't want to see them go through that same thing. Because a father is going to want the best for their kid. And that's going to be the only person that wants you to do better than they did. So
yeah,
for
no
us
doubt.
being fathers, we want our children to do better than we ever did in life. And
AP, I tell you what, man, that's a very good point. And so the one thing, and we can talk about the negative connotation of not having a dad around, and we can use that as a crutch to the good things or the bad things that happen in our life, right? But one thing that I've always committed to, even before I ever had kids, that once I had children, I was 100% committed to being what was absent in my life. I never wanted to bring a kid into this world to experience what I had to experience growing up, not only as a kid, but as a young black man trying to figure this thing out, man, trying to figure out this whole thing about life and good decisions and bad decisions and what are the formulas to make productive decisions and and we made some mistakes, man. I don't please don't look at this product and think that it's a finished product. Don't look at this product and think that it's without flaws. We've made some mistakes. I mean, all the way up as recent as a couple of years ago. And when I say mistakes, I'm not necessarily talking about mistakes in raising my kids or parenting. I'm talking more about mistakes at life. There were some bad decisions that were made. And so I've had to deal with the byproduct of that. And I've been very fortunate, Adrian. I always say that the good Lord protects fools and babies, right? And so I guess I fall in the fool category because he's protected me from myself a lot of times. I've learned to limit those opportunities where I lean on him to bail me out of dumb decisions I've made. And I try to do a little bit better with my decision making and be that model for my kids. And as it relates to the kids, you brought up a very good point, man. My oldest, she'll tell you guys, man, when it was just her for the short time that it was just her, it was hard on her, man, because the one thing that was always an expectation for me was that I knew that the formula to success for African American kids were to be good students, to be respectful, and to have some sort of athletic ability. I knew that those three components would help give them the platform in life. And so I pushed my kids to be in the sports, but equally, I pushed them as hard in academics as they did in sports. And now this was a contradiction, right, to the upbringing I had. But it didn't take me long, Adrian, to figure out that was basically when we were coming up, there was basically two paths to success. It was either military or college. That was it. You didn't have the CTE to trade. That wasn't as big as it is today. And so I knew that I wasn't cut out for the military. I knew that I really wasn't cut out for college, but I always wanted to play ball, right? And so my persistence is what created that platform. And so for my kids, man, I was big on it about that. And so early on, I always believed in teaching them to make good choices, and that was consistent between all three kids. I was big on the accountability of academics as far as um, making sure that they got their books. And then I was big on discipline. I wanted them to be respectful. And so the village that's created for them, obviously, my wife was huge and instrumental in the academic phase of their life and supporting them athletically. Obviously, Caleb, and his mom, my wife is a stepmom and he's got his mom. So he had a larger ecosystem of support with that, from that perspective. And so luckily, I think from that perspective, we were all on board with understanding what respect looked like for him and what success would look like for him. And so I was very fortunate for both sets of families to allow me to be the head of that and the spearhead that for my kid and help him to be the young man that he is. And then the baby girl, she kind of had the best of both worlds, right? So she came along when financially we were at a different standpoint in our household. She came along when by that time she came through, we understood what discipline looked like as it relate to being a productive young kid. We understood what the work looked like as it relates to athletics. So if you ask the older two, obviously they'll say, well, she had it, best. Well, it ain't that she had it best. It's just that she got a more refined parent than they had. And so hopefully when our grandkids come along, I'll be even better as a parent than that. But I said all that to say, Adrian, um, I don't, there was a time, man, when I took the negative connotation of the things that I didn't have in life and I wanted to use it as an excuse. I wanted to use it as a crutch. I wanted to use it as my reasons for things that happened positively for me, I mean, negatively for me, and not the reasons that happened positively for me, right? And so I had to have a shift in mindset in order for me to be able to progress the way that I need to. And that shift in mindset came from the notion of no excuses, only results. And so it's a little hardcore in nature because I operate with that matter. I operate with, people are in control of the things that happen to them, both good and bad. There's very few things that happen in life that you don't have control over. Some things happen by circumstance, most things happen by choices. And so I try to create good choices for myself. I try to teach my kids how to make good choices. Does that mean that they make good choices all the time? No, it doesn't. But at least it gives them the model of the platform to understand. how to do that, which is something that I was absent of. I had to learn this thing, uh, like we always say, we had to get it from the bootstraps, right? We had to learn it the hard way. And so, man, I just, that's my take on that, man. I'm very grateful and appreciative of the Lord and the opportunities that He provided for me. I got three wonderful kids, man. Elise, Caleb, and Amori. My oldest is a double master graduate from the University of Lamar. She'll have her graduation ceremony on December 12th this year. My son graduated with his master's in August from the University of Texas, Permian Basin. Baby girl graduated with her undergrad back in August, and now she's a grad student on the track team at Texas Tech, doing her thing. And so hopefully in another year or two, she'll come out with her master's degree. And I believe I've checked the box at that point, man. I believe that we've beat the odds at that point. It's the idea of raising three minority children, man. They all have master's degrees and have an opportunity to set their families apart and do something positive and productive on their own. And I hope at the end of the day that they appreciate, the hard times. I hope that they appreciate how stern daddy was about certain things. And when it's time for them to generate their families, hopefully that they raise the bar of expectations and knowing that, hey, not only is graduate high school is no longer enough. Being minimum wage is no longer the standard. Providing a certain quality of life for our family is the new standard that is established. And so long live the Pearson legacy, right? That's what the whole goal is for me.
That's good. That's good. I can look at your kids as most recently at the reunion, and I can tell they're close knit. I know they're three individual entities, but I know like without one, like they lose it because they
Yeah.
are so close knit. But I want to ask you this question. I'm going to pivot for a second before I go a little further. What led to your transition and that you knew that there was something within you that had to change?
Man, that's a good question, AP. The one thing that I've always wanted was something different than what I had coming up. I didn't know what that difference was until later in life, but I knew that growing up poor, growing up check to check, growing up pillar to post, growing up with no stable foundation, I knew that wasn't the lifestyle that I wanted. I didn't know how I was going to get something different. I don't want to be, lie here and say like I had the plan all figured out, but I knew that wasn't it for me. And so whatever it took to get something different, I was willing to try that. I was willing to do that. And so obviously, just like any other person that plays ball, we start off with the notion of ball is going to be our ticket, right? Ball is going to provide the platform for us to provide for our family and change the lives of everybody in our family. But it didn't take long for ball to give me the wake up call that that wasn't going to be my plight. And so I had a harsh crash, man. And I know, I remember because when you were coming through at Utah State, and I remember, man, I think at that time I was probably a high schooler, and I remember your mom, calling back, kind of telling us about your success, and we were tracking you. And I'm telling you about this because I want to get to a point, but um, I remember, you were getting recruited, or I say recruited, but obviously, you were under the microscope of the NFL teams at that time, and you were getting, recruitments from the Kansas City Chiefs. I remember that, and the Dolphins and other teams, and I thought for that second or that moment, I was like, man, Big Cuz is about to do this. He's about to get this opportunity, and so for me, that lit a little bit more of a spark. It gave me that extra motivation, extra drive to say okay, I've got to step it up a notch to make sure that I'm elite to give myself this opportunity. Whether it happens or not, I can't control that. But I need to put myself in the arena so that I'll give myself a chance. And then that transition that you're talking about, that transition, it took place for me, man, from Pop Warner all the way to high school ball, even through college ball at the highest levels. I can tell you that I have never been told that I wasn't good enough to play. Or it wasn't ever a team that I was a part of that I wasn't in the starting 11 when we rolled the first 11 out on the field. And so to get to that 21, 22-year-old mark and finally get to the end of my college career, and after playing in the East West Shrine game, All-Star game for my senior year, reality of this game is possibly no longer there for you, man, that was something that hit me in a different light. And it really caught me off guard, man, because football had always been my platform. And so now I've got to rely on something other than my skill set, or either I got to develop a different skill set. And the skill set that I'd always relied on was bigger, faster, stronger, aggressive, intensity, a desire to be better than everybody else. Those things no longer worked in my new adventure because I'm not wrestling with 300-pound men anymore. I'm not chasing DBs anymore. I'm not, those days are long gone. Now I've got to figure out how to be excellent at something else. I've got to figure out how to go pro and something other than sport. And so that's when, the idea of public education kind of provided a two-way go for me. It fueled the fire of still being able to be involved in athletics, and it gave me a different platform to be something else for myself. So that's kind of where that change happened for me.
That's good. Do you feel like, and I'm gonna before I ask you this question, I'm gonna open this door. So, you know Rohan Davey. You've heard of him.
The
Rohan Davey.
quarterback.
Huh? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Rohan was my high school teammate. Okay. Now, after Rohan is done playing for the Patriots, he backed up Tom Brady. Okay, one of
Yeah.
the greatest quarterbacks ever. So we're having this conversation, and he put something out there, and he said, when I was done playing, I got real depressed. And then another one of my teammates said the same thing. He said, you know what? He said, I thought I was the only one. Do you feel when you were done playing that you had a small bout or maybe a little bit with that?
Dude, let me tell you. I can remember exactly how it happened. And my mom will tell this story probably better than anybody else. So after my last game of my senior year, I signed immediately with Game Day Sports Agency out of Los Angeles, California. Myself and another one of my teammates, Joe Gibson, we went to LA to train for 3 or 4 months to get ready for the draft in April. And I remember we were down there and the agent was taking care of us, man. We were living the life. At that point, I literally thought that this NFL thing was about to be a realistic thing for me. And so, we go down there, we do that for 3 months. The draft come and go. Obviously, we didn't get drafted, and so at that point, we're hustling to become free agents, right? And just like everybody else in the drill. And so, I can tell you, and Uncle John, our Uncle John. Uncle John was instrumental in getting me a workout with the Detroit Lions. And so, I get a call from Detroit. I go down to Detroit. I'm there for a couple weeks or so during the rookie camp. Um, I was very fortunate. One of my good friends here in the Houston area, Jason Glenn, whose brother is now the head coach for the New York Jets, Aaron Glenn, he was down there with us. Another one of my good friends currently, Van Malone, who's coaching at Kansas State right now. He had just left Detroit. He got traded to Arizona. Well, anyway, I had a group of people that I could bounce things off of. Long story short, Adrian, the moment that Detroit told me that I was no longer allowed to be a part of their workouts, I came home because remember, I left mid semester. I left in November. So I came home and that was a 3 day window, man. My mom would tell the story better than anybody else. That was a 3 day window where I locked up in a room at 6501 Paris Street, that little two-bedroom house we had over there. I locked up in a room, Adrian. To this day, I can't remember using the restroom. I can't remember taking a shower. I can't remember coming out to eat. I can't remember talking to anybody. I don't remember anything associated with that transition period for me. I was so in the dumps, man. And I'll even say this part, my mom probably wouldn't be real happy about me telling this portion of the story either. But there was even a time, man, where I felt some resentment from mom because I felt like she was even disappointed that I didn't make it because obviously she had invested a lot into me at that time, and so she thought probably I was her ticket out. And when that didn't happen, man, that was a huge sense of failure that I had, and I had to refine myself, man. I had to go back and really do some soul searching. That's when my wife became instrumental, man. She was huge in helping me land who I am and find, what's the next thing to do, I've had to there were still some pivotal moments in decision making that was during that time for me where I was trying to decide whether I go finish college and get that degree, or do I start doing some of the dumb stuff that happens, in our family and in the streets. And so, man, to answer your question, yes, man, depression was a real deal during that time. And even when I was going through it, I don't know that I would call it depression, because obviously, the things about mental health that we know today, it wasn't as prevalent back then. But I can share with you, man, now the things that I know today, that's exactly what it was, man. I was dealing with mental health issues, and I was dealing with depression and all that kind of stuff. And so I had to get myself together in order to be the best version of myself today.
That's good, and I appreciate you saying that because I'll tell you a little bit about my situation that nobody knows. Okay, so when I was done in Miami, right? So I go back to Utah and go to the football office, and the secretary says, "Hey, did you know Buffalo was calling you yesterday?" I said, "No, nobody told me anything." So I'm on the phone trying to call, trying to call, trying to call, and I'm fresh back from being home. And they said, you know what, we went ahead and we went with somebody else. Then that was my aha moment. And then I'm just sitting there like, now what I got to do next? Now I have this kid on the way. I thought
Yeah,
everything was done. And I'm thinking, okay, I had the best of both worlds. I'm home. My mom can come to the practice. She got this smile on her face. She calling everybody. She happy. Everything. Man, I even remember Big Jeff asking me about that and everything. So I
yeah,
know what it means to have something. And I say that other people wish they had it. That just you're doing something and you're a trailblazer for everybody to be happy about. Because a lot
yeah,
of people didn't have the opportunity, but you're just doing it in a different way.
yeah.
And my moment was, I can tell you myself. I sat in my apartment for a couple days, just like you did. Not for 3 whole days, but I remember coming out, but I knew what it was. I knew something wasn't right. But I said I have to shake this off because number one, I got a kid coming, so I got to figure out something. And then number two, what am I gonna do? So I think that's part of where my growth and what you guys see now, and in the way that I talk, as opposed to the person I used to be. Now I tell people this all the time. A lot of people don't understand. Like the person they see now is not the person that everybody know. Like they don't know me. Y'all know me. They don't know me. But that person that they don't know, they don't want to know that person. And we all try to hide that person.
Ain't no doubt.
Who that old person is. That person is still there, but it's not like it's somebody that we want to have in the forefront because we're just trying to experience life differently than what we did before.
Ain't no
And
doubt.
now in this I wouldn't even say an elder statesman age. I would say in the age that we at right now, we're still at a turning point right now. We're not even 50 yet, but we're still at a turning point. In our inner circle, as we call the underprivileged boys, we have some that are
Yeah,
older than us,
yeah,
we
no
have
doubt.
some that our age, and then we have some that are younger than us. And I think the baseline is coming back and knowing and understanding that what I'm better off right now, knowing and understanding where I am now, and I have a hold of where I am now, as opposed to where I was then.
Oh,
And
ain't
I
no
think
doubt.
that will help me become a better version of myself that I can live with. Because if I can't live with myself, no one else can live with me at
Yeah, no
all,
doubt.
at all.
No,
So I appreciate you saying that because a lot of people don't understand that, and they don't understand the trials and the things that people go through that are it's a gambler's lot.
yeah,
You cash all your chips in, you try everything. If it doesn't work, then you're like, well, I gotta walk away with nothing.
yeah.
What I gotta walk away with.
And
But
AP, to kind of put that into perspective, or to wrap that thought process up, I can even remember as a coach, if a kid had a plan B, that wasn't the kid that I wanted to go with me. I wanted the kid that was going all in on this thing. And that's who I was. I didn't have a plan B or a plan C or a plan D. My plan B was a byproduct of plan A. failing, and I had to create a plan B. So all of my eggs were in this basket. All of my chips were on the table as it related to um, playing ball. And when that basket broke, dude, I had to pick up the pieces. I had to find Humpty Dumpty and get him back together in a hurry because it was pivotal. And on top of that, I had a son that was going to touch down in a matter of months. So I had to make this happen. And so, yeah, man, that's a very pivotal point there.
Do you think now? I talked about the underprivileged boys, and well, my mom was just here. On that drive to Dallas for Aunt Jerry's funeral. And I always ask her questions because I'm curious because there's a lot of stuff I don't know that she hasn't told me. But anytime that I get a one-on-one with her, I just ask a few different questions. She gives me a little bit more insight. She told me how that started. She told me how that started. She said that it was actually the Dallas folks that started that, and we just adopted it and we
The
ran with
underprivileged?
it. Yes,
No, that's not true.
that's what
That's
she
not
told
true.
me. Now,
Let me
okay,
tell you
thank
how
you,
it
thank you
started.
for clearing it up. Clear it up now.
Yeah.
Clear it up.
Let me tell you how it started. So I want to. I'm trying to make sure I have all the people correct, but I want to say it was myself and Lee, and I can't remember if Lil Will was there with us, but I know for a fact it was myself and Lee. We picked up Uncle Winston from the airport, and Uncle Winston, he used to fly in and out all the time. And Uncle Winston, what he had this strange way of showing affection, and his way of showing affection was by being demeaning and demoralizing, right? And so Uncle Winston, as you guys, this audience may not know, but Uncle Winston was a doctor of education. He was a superintendent of schools in California. He was an esteemed educational professional and a character, right? He was a whole character. Well, anyway, Uncle Winston, when he came to town, we picked him up, and Lee and I decided that we were going to show him out on the town one day. And so we took him out. I remember it like yesterday. We went to the Papados on 610, right there across from the Astrodome. And so we had Uncle Winston out, and if you know Uncle Winston was a cheap vodka drinker. He was a Taka vodka guy. He didn't believe in the upscale Grey Goose and all that stuff. Well, anyway, we take him into this restaurant, and Uncle Winston had on a plaid cowboy shirt, some Wrangler jeans, blue jean, some boots, had on his cowboy hat. And so we're going in, and Lee and I, in typical Lee and I fashion, we're seeing all the ladies in the house, and we're kind of telling Uncle Winston, hey, look at this good looking lady, look at this good looking lady, and just kind of egging him on a little bit. So Uncle Winston looked around and he started calling everybody in the house underprivileged. He was like, hey, y'all are just underprivileged. You don't know no better. You're just underprivileged. That's all you are. He said, look at you boys. And so Lee and I, of course, we thought we was fresh to death. We had on polos and Jabot jeans and probably Gucci glasses. And we decked out. And Uncle Winston is looking at us saying we're underprivileged. And from there, we started calling ourselves the underprivileged boys because every time that he would see us, he would call us the little underprivileged boys, you little underprivileged boys. And so that's the truth on how it started. And so from there, we didn't run from the name. We adopted the name and we just started rolling with the underprivileged. And obviously, it spread like wildfire because it became a badge of honor for us. It was like, hey, yeah, we're underprivileged, but we look at it as a privilege to be underprivileged, right? And so that's kind of how it started. That's the truth on how it started.
All right, good. Thank you for clearing that up. Thank you for
Yeah.
clearing that up. Good, good, good. Let's talk about the choices that you are right now and the place that you're at right now in education. What is something that you can say since you've been in education all these years that moving forward you would hope to see change for our people?
So I'm gonna tell you this, Adrian. You know, I am a huge advocate of public education for more than the obvious reason. The obvious reason is obviously because I'm a product of public education, but education is the opportunity equalizer. I truly believe that. I wouldn't sit before you today as a middle class male uh, with a master's degree in education having the opportunity to run at one point the 16th largest school district in the state of Texas, now one of the top 20 largest school district in the state of Texas. Um, taking my experiences across the state to deal with public education from an operational efficiency and effectiveness standpoint, I wouldn't have had those opportunities if it wasn't for the opportunities that public education has provided for me. I'll tell you this without getting political at all. Public education is under attack. And so um, the opportunities that little brown and black kids receive are not equal to their counterparts if public education is not the platform that they're provided the opportunity. I still believe in the idea of the inalienable right of an American citizen being born on this soil. You're entitled to a free and appropriate public education. And what I would like to see in the long run is that we stabilize our educational system, give it some sustainability measures that will help kids, not just brown and black, because this is not when the attack on public education happens, although it adversely affects the brown and black kids, it affects all kids. But what I would like to see is that the political factions would take out politics away from education. Because when you play politics in education, it hurts our kids, it hurts our generation. I believe this. The great late coach Eddie Robinson from Grambling State University, this was one of his favorite quotes that I adopted as a part of my career. And that quote is, "This nation is solely predicated upon the education of its youth." I believe that. Our next doctors, our future lawyers, our future presidents, our future governors, state leaders, uh, clergy leaders, these are all kids that are going through our educational system today. And if we don't improve and strengthen the public education that our kids are receiving, other countries are getting further and further ahead of us. We're no longer the leader of industry like we used to be. That's a direct byproduct of the public education system. I had an opportunity, man, when I was in El Paso and we were having some of our community meetings. I had an opportunity to have a direct conversation with a professor at the University of UTEP. His name was Max Grossman. And Max said something to me, man, it was a real earth-shattering reality about the public education system. And what Max shared with me was Max shared that as a professor, he watched of the 100% of college freshmen that enter his course, less than 8% of those kids have the academic aptitude to be successful in college. Less than 8%. Less than 3% of that 8% actually stay 4 years. And less than 2% of the 3% actually graduate. That's earth shattering. Now, from that perspective, as an educator, it tells me that we have a call to action. And that call to action is number one, we've got to provide more opportunities for our kids because the truth is, this generation of kids, they're just cut differently, right? These kids are not on education as we knew it, right? We were born and raised on teacher facilitated brick and mortar public education, right? But today, COVID has taught us some lessons that we've had to adapt to. Number one, we've learned that we're more flexible in education than we thought we were. We've learned that there's synchronous and asynchronous lessons that can actually take place, that the internet and virtual lessons are our friend and not our enemy, and that we can use the internet as an ally versus an opponent. These things have modernized education as we know it. And it's okay for kids to have different learning modalities that doesn't necessarily equate back to teachers standing in front of a classroom doing 65 minutes of straight teacher facilitated instruction. Even more than that, from a larger perspective, every kid is just not cut out to go to college. And so in public education, we have to provide opportunities through certifications to give kids an opportunity to be productive citizens. So we've got to provide sellable skills that these kids can come out and make money to be a part of the ecosystem and the economy in their communities. Because what we believe in public education is that $1 put back into that community turns over 7 times. That's how we re-strengthen our communities. It's the public education system. It's educating and giving our kids the skill sets both through the education platform as well as through the trade platform, to be able to be a productive citizen in their own communities and help that gentrification, help that growth and plight of those communities. And so I hope, in a nutshell, that the long range plan for public education is that we can find a bipartisan product that is sustainable, that we get back to where education is a right of every American citizen, and that our government goes aggressively into funding education appropriately and not putting the burden solely on the taxpayers or the local education system.
I think that's telling because, and you can kind of see like a kind of a correlation to these PWIs and these HBCUs, which is staunch. And you think about a long time ago, some of our early leaders that are like our civil rights leaders and other leaders we had a long time ago, that's the only opportunity they had for college was some of these HBCUs, you know.
That's correct.
And now they come out and they have something, and now moving forward, we have been gentrified to believe that these PWIs are the place to be, as opposed to being community based as Black Wall Street. If you want to talk about it in the education sense, if we put back into where we were, then things would be that. You know, I told somebody the other day, I kind of always wanted to go to a HBCU, but when it never planned out because I had other plans, I didn't even think, I never had a second thought about it. And it wasn't for the
Yeah.
party, it wasn't for everything else, it was for the experience.
Yeah.
It's for the experience of being there because you see so many pivotal people having a connection. And with that connection, they have other avenues and other routes that they can go. And they are a major network for the things that they've done. I mean, you think about how many people that are out there now, not too many people can say that they know a leader or someone that's in a higher office that's a graduate of an HBCU or a different college. Some of them they go to those colleges, those different colleges for the name so they can network that way. And I'm glad you
Right.
brought that up because there needs to be more community involvement and there needs to be some other tools that are given because let's face it, parents are becoming younger and younger. So the basis of teaching kids the way that they need to be taught, those lessons aren't being learned. And
Right.
the most pivotal person in that home or in that family, they're not living. For us, we knew who that was.
Ain't no
We knew
doubt.
who those people were. We can call them by name. We say that name. Everybody what? They sit
We
right
get it
there.
right. Yeah.
They're not doing nothing. They're not going
Yeah.
against that. That
Yeah.
doesn't exist anymore. And that doesn't exist for a lot of other people. But now with this generation, as you said before, there's there's a disconnect. And the
Yeah.
disconnect is I don't want to do it because I want to do it my way. But that's fine. But you also have to have another path, another platform that you can use and you can join that will lead to your success.
Yeah.
I'm
No
glad you
doubt.
brought that up. That was very good. That was very good. Talk about you being a leader. Let's talk about you being a what is a leader to you?
So a leader is a person that's got to be okay and comfortable with the idea that leadership is lonely. I can tell you that I look at leadership from my own experience in three different facets. Number one, obviously, I'm a leader in the work environment, public education. I've served on executive cabinet in the last three, four districts that I've been a part of, which is, the top leadership brass in the district. So in each one of the organizations that I've had the opportunity to lead, uh, I've always had the second largest amount of employees under my purview, obviously in the operational side, only second to teaching and learning. Leadership in my home is also prevalent from the perspective of I've had to learn what that leadership was about as well. It wasn't just about wearing the big stick or having a big voice. It's about understanding that there's lives that are at stake that are dependent on you making some of the right decisions, the lights coming on, food being provided, and providing guidance moving forward. And then there's a last level of leadership for me that I kind of took on myself, I think. But some of the elders or forefathers, the former matriarchs and patriarchs of our family, kind of thrust on me, and that's our family leadership. And so, Adrian, I can tell you all three of those leadership models have their challenges. It takes a special person to be willing to do that. Um, a lot of times you got to put your personal feelings to the side for the greater good. And sometimes I'm better at that than others. Sometimes I voice my opinion in a non-democratic fashion, which isn't always good. And I'm talking more family leadership now, which isn't always good for the holistic system. But for me, sometimes it's needed. And so I try to limit those opportunities because I understand that, you know, uh, especially when the family is fragile. Like we just lost our last original heir in the family. And so we're at a pivotal point because now we're expecting that second level, that second generation of family members to step up. And so I need to call that I'm not even in that second level of family members. I'm in the next level down. I'm the third level of family members. But I can even tell you in the Bible that Jesus was a child when he was called to leadership. And so people don't follow titles, they follow action. And that's what's important. I try to lead by example. I try to do the work that I expect others to do. I try to make sure that I have a model of inspecting what I expect. I also try to make sure that I have a understanding that people are different, and it takes all kinds of people to make up this world we live in. And it would be a very boring world if we were all unique. If we were all if we were all, I'm sorry, not unique. If we were all alike. And so uniqueness is it's a, it's an opportunity. It's a skill set, and that we should welcome everybody's uniqueness, and as a part of leadership. And so whether it's leading my family or leading my professional life at work or leading, the holistic family, there's an inner Pearson that has to be suppressed most times to be the person that everybody around me needs. And so I have to really be conscious of that.
That is a fact. And that's a fight that all of us have to fight. Because, like I said, it be itching to come out sometimes.
Yeah.
But you got to keep it at bay. You got to keep it
Yeah.
at bay.
No doubt.
Now, I want to ask this question, and it's going to tie into what you just said. Now, let's take your upbringing, let's take your athletic time, let's take you being a coach, let's take your early stages of being in the education system. What would you say you can take out of those things and put it in a pot that you want people to see about you right now?
I want people to see that the person that sits before them on a daily basis, the person that leads public school systems in Texas, person that leads my family, the person that leads all the things that I've done in my career, number one, is not a finished product. And it took a lot of polishing to get that person there. And that this person was extremely raw when started. And to get to who I am today, which is still a work in progress, it took all of those experiences, Adrian. It took every single one of them. It took the playing experience. It took the coaching experience. It took the experience of being fatherless. It took the experience of trying to navigate some of those things that we had to navigate in the community. It took the experience of trying to navigate professional politics. It took the experience of being an African American male in public education at the highest levels, where there's not a lot of people that look like me that do the job that I do. It took all of those experiences to make me who I am today. And so I wear that as a badge of honor. I wear it because my mantra is no excuses, only results. I I I want to represent for that young boy and that young girl that's sitting in a classroom that's fatherless, that you can either use that as a crutch or you can use that as your platform. I want to represent for that young boy and that young girl that's growing up in the barrios or in the neighborhoods, that you can use your surroundings as environments as your crutch, or you can use it as your platform. I've always believed in this. I'm going to be the person that goes into the room that sets the temperature. I'm not going to be the one that go in there that adjusts to the temperature. I'm going to change my environment no matter where I go into. I want people, when I come into contact with people, I want to make it, whether it be the people, the organization, or whatever, to be better than it was when I left, when I found it. That's what my goal is, and that's what my goal is with people in general. I pride myself, Adrian, and real talk. I pride myself on being a really good person, and I tell my team that every day. I say, the number one skill set that I bring to this organization, number one, is the skill set of reality. I understand how to keep the perspective in front of myself. But I also understand that the number one investment that you can make is not in systems, it's not in processes, it's not in platforms, it's in people. If you invest in people, a product of that will pay off way more than any other thing that you can invest in. Systems have a life expectancy. Efficiency and technology, it turns over every 3 years. You got an iPhone 15, 16 in your hand today. In 7 months, iPhone 17 is on the shelf. 8 months after that, iPhone 18 is on the shelf. The only thing that you can invest in that has a 100% return on your investment is investing in people. I still believe in the Christian values of you do good to people. If you treat people right, good things will happen to you. And that's been my mantra. That's the one thing that I want, that when people look into my melting pot and they see all the experiences that I have in that melting pot, I want them to know that the byproduct that comes out of that melting pot, number one, it's not finished, but it's number two, it's a good person that's that come from the bottoms and trying to get it every day. It's not a finished product, because once you're finished, once you've reached the top, the decline starts, right? And so for me, it's a ever chasing thing. It's fleeting. Success is fleeting. It's never a culmination. We never get to that point. And so I want to spend the rest of my professional life chasing perfection and chasing success.
In your professional career, where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Done. That's where I see myself. It's funny you say that, because my wife and I have this conversation all the time, man. Um, I'm in a high stake job, Adrian. Every decision is pivotal. Every decision costs thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of taxpayers' dollars. Every decision directly affects children. One of the biggest things that I fear every single day, man, in this screwed up society that we live in, it's my biggest fear that I'm going to have to go stand in somebody's home one day and tell them that their kid is not coming home to them because of some failed system that happened in my school system. So the diligence, pressures of making sure that systems are in place, especially safety systems, that's a high stake, high pressure job. I signed up for it, right? But I don't know that I can do this for a long period of time. And so ideally, I need to work 10 more years. My earliest retirement happens in 5 years. I tell myself that I'm done in five because I can't go 10. But I don't know. I don't know what the good Lord has in store. But the long-term plan for me is to be done pretty soon.
Okay. Is that the same as being, are you next in line to be superintendent, or is that something that you have your sights set on?
Well, superintendent. So yeah, sitting on the executive cabinet, I am, in the top branch of the district. So obviously, there's a superintendent and there's executive cabinet. When I started on my professional journey, obviously being a superintendent was the ultimate goal. My last two experience in large public school systems, I've had a different perspective as it relates to becoming a superintendent. And so if the end of my career ends up as a superintendent, I won't be disappointed. And I think my experiences will have me ready, obviously. Uh, if I don't, I'm okay with walking out in the position that I've served in the last 10 years or better.
Okay. All right. Any last thoughts? Any last things you want to share with everybody?
No, man. Ultimately, I appreciate you thinking enough of me to give me an opportunity to come and visit with your audience and your platform. Obviously, we both have a message to share, and so giving us the Lord gives us platforms that we can share those positive messages, and even some messages that wasn't necessarily positive experiences for us, but those messages can obviously help somebody else at certain times. And so, I'm extremely grateful for that, because you've always been an inspiration for me, and so I appreciate seeing your platforms come across, your TikToks and those podcasts that you have come across, especially when you have guests. I enjoy listening to those, and so hopefully we were able to add some positive insight. And again, I just appreciate the opportunity.
That's my goal every day to learn something, to have someone on here so that someone can learn something about something that they have no idea about at
Yeah,
all. So that'll be good because I'm actually working on the next show, and it's about change, you know.
yeah.
So that's good. So this is a good segue to that. So we're gonna get to that. Am I gonna see you next week?
Ain't no doubt, brother. Ain't no
Okay,
doubt. Thanksgiving turkey time.
definitely will be there in the place.
Ain't, all
All
right
right,
now. Shout out to big cousin Regina Gale and Michael Simmons, who gonna host a Thanksgiving turn up, Pearson style. So we'll definitely be in the building.
definitely. All right, well that's our show for today. Thank you for watching, and this is the Black Male Podcast. And as always, be good to yourself and be good to others. Peace.
Peace.